It's good to see you all. And Secretary, thank you very much for being here.
My pleasure.
We've all been looking forward to this.
My pleasure.
So I've got a few things that I want to talk to you about. And I suspect there's other things or additional things that the audience would like to talk to you about. But what I want to talk about first is when you came to Washington, if you think about it, it's not that long ago, but it was an extraordinary time, right? The pandemic was far from over. Little did we know that we were about to be that the world would be starting and seeing a war in Europe. We were still recovering from just everything related to the pandemic, supply chains. Fortunately, I guess for everybody, 2021 turned out to be an extraordinary year, thanks a lot to, one, the combination of vaccines and stimulus, and the economy came back more quickly. But as we've learned, the world has a lot of dependencies that we didn't know about prior to 2020 and prior to the Ukraine war. So you've played a very significant role in the policy response since then. So I wanted to really talk about, at a very high level, as you think about where we are now, where we've come from, what do you think are the biggest challenges facing the nation? And how do you think do you think we've started to address them?
Yeah, great question. First of all, thank you for having me. You may not know this, but I have known Ron for a long time because when I was the governor of Rhode Island, he lived in Massachusetts, but had a summer house in Rhode Island. And even in the transition, we had breakfast, you might not remember this, and I said, I need your help. I need you to jump in and help serve, because at that time our unemployment rate was the highest in the country. And he did. He joined our Economic Development Board, came to the meetings, which was at least a 2-hour commute. And so when he called to ask me to do this, I leapt at the opportunity, because you're a top-notch person, in addition to a great executive. When I started, if you had said to me, okay, Governor, we want you to come do this, you'll be in charge of supply chains, there's going to be a war in Ukraine, and you'll be in charge of the export controls. And oh, by the way, you'll have to invest $50 billion for the semiconductor crisis. I don't know. I might not have done it. It's such a big job and so many challenges. So a few thoughts in answer to your question. I think the facts are clear. Our economy is just about the strongest in the world right now. I'd much rather be the US than Europe. Much rather be the US than China. Not perfect, people are still feeling it when they go to the grocery store, put gas in their car, et cetera, with inflation. And I'm not minimizing that. Employers are still, struggling to hire people at the rate they need with the skills they need. But fundamentally, the bottom never fell out of this economy in the way that it has in other places, and that a lot of people thought that it would. And so I feel great about that. Now, that being said, what do I still worry about? The COVID really put a spotlight on how fragile our supply chains are. And it's still a huge problem. It is still, we're working on it, but still all our penicillin comes from China or India. Still all of our advanced semiconductor chips come from Taiwan. Still all of the critical minerals that we need for electric vehicle batteries or semiconductors are processed in China, and on and on and on. You mentioned an interconnected world. That's an untenable, insecure vulnerability that I think we're making progress on, but I worry greatly about that. I'm spending a lot of my time now on artificial intelligence. I actually worry about that. It's exciting. It's an opportunity. I'm sure it's transformed your business. But the AI in the hands of bad actors present a technological threat that we haven't really had to deal with in our adult life. Also, if you think about all forms of discrimination that could come about because of AI. So the Department of Commerce runs NIST, which is the AI standard setting body, and I do all the corporate engagement on AI. So it's exciting, but I worry about it. And the final thing that I worry about and I'm very focused on is just this, is the mismatch in labor supply and labor demand, which is going to be exacerbated by AI. So we have so many Americans who are currently underemployed because they don't have the skills they need to get high-paying jobs, or are employed now, and they're maybe mid-career,
Right.
but they're not going to be able to do that same job in a few years. And we have to retrain them. And I worry about that because that requires a mobilization of government and education that's hard to do. But I think it's vital for our economy. So anyway, the list of worries is long, but those are a few of the things that I'm really focused on.
So picking up on a couple of those themes, I think when people historically have thought about the Commerce Department, they think about commerce and they think about the economy and competitiveness. You've also, just by going through the issues you've raised the issue of geopolitics. So as you think about that list of issues, what are your priorities and what should be the priorities of the nation in the areas of competitiveness and addressing these geopolitical issues?
Look, I think the single most important thing that we need to do is ensure a strong America. So whether it's competition with China or Russia or whoever, we need to be able to compete, which means we need to out-innovate, invest in our innovation, invest in our infrastructure, invest in our research and development, invest in, our own capacity to innovate and compete. Similarly, it's about investing, but it's also about just making it easier to do that, to innovate faster. Maybe that's regulatory change, maybe that's visa improvements, to allow people to come to the United States. But you can only do so much defense. So when I think about geopolitics, it's about America's ability to lead in the world. Our capital markets, our entrepreneurs, our innovation is the envy of the world. That allows us to compete with strength. So we have to invest in that to maintain it. Beyond that, the competition, the geopolitical tension I think most about is that with China. And so the other side of the coin from the offense is the defense. And the area that I'm a leader in is the export controls. What we have said is we want to do business with China. I just came from China. We want to do business with China. We have $700 billion trading relationship. So we should do that. But we cannot allow them to have access to our most sophisticated technology that by their own admission they want to put in the military. They have this civil military fusion strategy. They want AI chips to put into their hypersonic weapons and such. So in any event, the offense is still by far the most important, but we have to protect us. And in my zone, that's protecting our technology from, mostly from the PRC.
You've raised China, so I'd like to dive deeper into it. So many of our assumptions about China have changed in a very short period of time, probably appropriately so. Your trip was highly followed. I happened to, as you know, I happened to be there at the same time.
He literally followed me.
There was a lot of curiosity about the trip. So tell us a little bit more about it. I mean, we've all read about it, but tell us what you think was achieved and what you think is left on the table at this point.
Yes. So first of all, since it's a setting like this and not just what you read, they were very gracious, very focused on making it a successful set of meetings. And I do think that's important. It wasn't obvious. We were given every meeting we asked for. The premier was very generous with his time, went over time, candid as far as these things go. It was quite open, quite candid. We put issues on the table. And that's a beginning. I don't know if we'll solve any problems due to talking. I know we won't if we don't talk. And I'm the first Commerce Secretary to go to China in more than 5 years. until this point, we've had essentially no back and forth. Think about that. We've had no phone calls, no real meetings. So this was a big step forward. I went, aired grievances. We opened a commercial issues working group, which has already started meeting. Very good progress, can report. I was there just a few weeks ago, commercial issues working group. We launched a working group around trade secrets, which has also started meeting. We launched something on export control information exchange. So, what's to come is all the action. So what happened was some good talk, right? And they said in the meetings what you'd want to hear. Now, what's to come is some action. What I said to them is, listen, actions speak louder than words. So they're telling me, and what they told me was, we want U.S. investment, we want to trade, we want more travel. Okay, fine. Then, you can't raid U.S. businesses for no obvious reason. You can't be so arbitrary in the way you enforce regulations that it's so unpredictable. U.S. business feels it's uninvestable. You can't steal all our IP at epic levels. You know what I'm saying? Let's see what you're willing to do by the actions you take.
Did you get a sense that the Chinese leadership, or what was your sense from Chinese leadership about the current economic situation? Because the world has really changed for China.
Yeah.
Very high educated youth unemployment, precipitously dropping foreign direct investment. So
Yeah.
Did you get a sense that they were worried, or did you get a sense that nothing to see here?
No, I would say somewhere in between, but a little closer to worried. Very open about the challenges in the real estate market and about the fact that 70+% of Chinese private savings are tied up in that market. Right. So it's a very big deal. Open about the slowdown, but they said it's temporary. This is temporary, we're struggling now, but used words like struggling. And very open about the nosedive in private sector investment.
Right.
So it was pretty candid.
Yeah. You spent a lot of time both beforehand and while you were there with American businesses.
I did.
What was the feedback that you were getting there on the ground from American interests?
I said this to Ron. The businesses on the ground were just so happy to see me. Not me. So happy to see a U.S. commercial government official. You really got the feeling that they've been hanging out there on their own for years. They have been, through really tough lockdowns, not knowing. So just gratitude. Thank you so much for showing up. Maybe there can be some return to normal order. Prior to going, as Ron said, I spoke with over 100 U.S. CEOs. And it was interesting. Most of the CEOs with whom I spoke have been doing business in China for 10, 20, 30 years in some cases. They said China's increasingly uninvestable. They would say things like, I want to do more, but my board won't let me. I want to do more because the market is huge, but my board's afraid of the risk. And, I get asked all the time, CEOs say, what do you think? What do you think? And I say, look, I'm not in the business of telling you what to do. But I think you can do business in China insofar as you're prepared for that to go to zero on a moment's notice. So if 100% of your business is China, that's probably an untenable risk. But I think it's, when you see what we're seeing, this counter-espionage law, where it's not clear what is a document related to national security, or it's not clear what consumer data you can collect on Chinese people, and it could be changed tomorrow, and what you're doing could be illegal, that's a tough environment. So what I heard over and over again from U.S. CEOs was it's uninvestable. It's attractive, it's exciting, it's 1 billion people, it's still growing, economy's still growing. but their boards are really saying, look at the risk. Don't discount the risk.
Yes, and I know that boards don't like to hear the potential for zero.
Yeah,
So,
which is reasonable.
you're here with the Financial Services Forum. Kevin's the chair of the forum, so it's inevitable that I was going to turn to financial services. My belief is that the U.S. banking and financial services system is the most competitive in the world. It has helped both the American economy and it's helped, I think, American power around the world. How do you think about the role of not just banks but financial services broadly in this world context? I mean, you're not often hearing from us in terms of, we need your help here, we need your help there. It's not the same as chips, it's not the same as a supply chain, but nonetheless, it's quite important for American competitiveness. But how do you think about it, the role of the banks and the financial services firms?
Exactly as you say. So when I said before, I think U.S. capital markets are unquestionably the most stable and deepest and most liquid in the world. And that's a good thing. That makes us competitive in the world. I really believe that. If every company globally wants to go public on our exchanges, that is a good thing. If U.S. private equity and commercial capital is fueling innovation throughout the world, that is a good thing. It's strength, it's U.S. soft power, it's U.S. strength. My point before about playing offense, leading in the world from a position of strength. Europe doesn't have our credit market, much less places like India, or other places. Banks have retrenched a bit, and I would love to know more about how much. But still, the fact that our markets are so stable, systemic risk is much lower than it's been, I think is a strength of America and allows us to lead in the world with strength, and also allows our businesses to grow, which is fundamental. I mean, as you look around at the balance sheets and such of American businesses at every stage, except maybe SMEs, which I think we have to worry about and think about, they have access to capital in ways that allow them to grow. And that is a great thing for the United States.
So maybe I'll finish and then can we take questions from the audience? So one last question. Lots of banks and financial services firms represented in this room. How can we be helpful to what you're trying to achieve?
Yeah, I appreciate that. No, keep doing what you're doing, which is to say, keep your eye on risk, but keep money flowing. Particularly, I've already said, I worry about middle market lending. I do worry about that. And I worry about Main Street USA still not being recovered from COVID. I worry about commercial real estate. So you're in the middle of all of that. So continue to lend. Don't retrench too much. And keep your eye on risk. That helps the American economy.
Yeah, agree.
That helps the American economy. Like, how you can help me is keep this economy going. Keep this economy strong. So I'd say that. I mentioned earlier AI. Your businesses will be massively impacted by AI. And we need to hear from business around that. We're in the position of, we'll have to regulate AI. That's very tricky. We have to make sure we don't stifle innovation, but we have to make sure we, have safe uses of AI. We're at the get-go on that. We're in the first inning of the regulatory part of it. Industry, maybe this organization, like industry engagement, so we can get that right, could be incredibly helpful.
Yeah. In fact, we've got a panel on that very topic later today. I have time for one question, so it better be a good one. And if you could identify yourself too.
So if you could put your trade hat on, and if we could talk about IPEF and kind of outlook and outcome expected for APEC.
Thank you so much. So CANDI refers to the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, otherwise known as IPEF, which is an initiative I'm leading with 13 countries in the Indo-Pacific. It is not a trade agreement, but it's a big deal insofar as it's a multilateral agreement with all of those countries around supply chains, digital trade, decarbonization, and good governance. So the thought was, let's come up with a few specific relevant problems that we want to tackle together with the Indo-Pacific. Back to the point about supply chains being interconnected. Wouldn't it be a good thing if we had a closer relationship with Malaysia, where so many semiconductor packaging plants went down due to COVID outbreaks and put 10,000 people out of work in Michigan auto plants? So in any event, it's going well. I am hopeful that in APEC, we'll be able to finalize chapters 2, 3, and 4. Supply chains, good governance, and the climate one, and maybe all 4. So I think that our goal is for President Biden to be able to announce that, and I feel really good about it. And then we got to get to the business of doing some concrete deals. And that, I think, is going to come very soon thereafter. I don't know what you would say. I see a big appetite.
Yeah, I think, we see the appetite. I think it gets back to the question of, I think Jane mentioned it, that some of the financing, right, and some of the things that we need to do on the capital side, or working with the MDBs and some of that, particularly when we're dealing with like climate transition and some of these big projects that still get, at least from a bank perspective, get kind of stuck in the system. But I think we're working through, there's been a lot more dialogue now with
Good.
Treasury and elsewhere.
It's really good. I think signing up this text is step 1. But you could imagine if you had a country at the highest levels of their federal government that has signed on to the tax and anti-corruption pillar, it's more interesting for you to do business there.
Right.
So it's a priority. It's making progress. I'm feeling quite hopeful for APEC.
So I think we're at the end of
We're
time.
out of time. This was fun. Thank you.
Very grateful for you being here and very grateful
Thank
for your
you.
service. Thanks very much.
Thank you, guys.